Saw dudes, I recently released 2 Garuda Prime Build videos, with the latest one being the best iteration for high level content. As usual, I wanted to follow up with a level cap video to show off its efficacy in difficult content. I can't really say I'm surprised at the way this gameplay turned out, since I have been a broken record about how Garuda is broken and does way too much damage. She isn't a blender, as her talents would make you believe, but a bloody AC 130. If you're looking for a great frame for level cap Void Cascade, Garuda is a great option. Let's get started. The Garuda Prime build shown is the same as in my previous video, and it's a helmet setup. I use Nourish over Blood Altar since we have Multi-Reconstruct, which provides all the healing we would need. Brief Respite is still on the build for a bit of shield gating, which is my personal preference. You can swap this out for any other aura you would want. Cunning Drift increases ability range and slide distance. Prime Continuity extends ability duration, and Prime Flow increases energy reserves. Stretch and Overextended increase range yet again. Umbral Intensify and Transient Fortitude increase ability strength, offsetting the negative from Overextended. Vigorous Swap increases the damage done by the Dreadheart, and Blending Talons allows us to spam Seeking Talons a bit faster. As mentioned earlier, I use Nourish as my helmet ability. This increases the energy return from Bloodletting and buffs the direct damage of the thrown Dreadheart. It also applies viral damage to Seeking Talons for better priming. For Arcanes, I used Arcane Avenger and Multi-Reconstruct. Avenger allows the Dreadheart to crit for even higher damage, and Multi-Reconstruct heals us and allies 6 health for each point of energy spent on abilities. The healing from Reconstruct allows us to sub out Blood Altar for Nourish. The Archon Shards I use are also the same as in the dedicated video. I have 3 Tauforge Amber Shards for casting speed and 2 Tauforge Emeralds. One is for increasing the max corrosive stacks by 3 for higher direct explosion damage. The other is to increase ability damage on enemies affected by corrosive procs, again for the higher direct damage. These 2 Emerald Shards make instant kills much more common, leading to a faster Exilizer clear time. The primary weapon I used was Cedo, mainly for the Glaive Allfire. While the build shown makes it suitable for normal use, I only really used it to spread corrosive and cold procs on enemies. With Arcane Avenger, the Glaive was able to clear enemies at lower levels, but it quickly fell off. If you want, you could use a full primer setup, but I didn't feel the need to. Laetum was my secondary, with Marksman's Hand, Lethal Rearmament, Kaput Mortem, and Overwhelming Attrition as the Incarnon evolutions. To be honest, I barely use this weapon, which just goes to show how strong Garuda truly is. This is a crit Laetum setup because I like red numbers. Hornet Strike provides big PP base damage, and Prime Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker provide our heightened base crit stats. Pistol Acuity multiplies our headshot crit chance, since it's a multiplicative bonus on this weapon in Incarnon form. The rest of the mods combine to add magnetic, corrosive, and heat damage on hit, which will melt anything. The melee weapon I chose to use was Praedos for the extra movement capabilities. The evolutions I used are the standard Drifting Grace, Shockwave Synergy, Evolved Ascension, and Universal Readiness. The mods used were Sovereign Outcast, Dreamer's Wrath, Prime Reach, Conditional Overload, Blood Rush, Weeping Wounds, Galvanized Elementalist, Prime Fury, Organ Shatter, and Galvanized Steel. The Panzer build I went with is the standard one I have shown in my other showcases. Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond are usually essential, but just keep them on the build since your weapons can still serve a purpose. The mod you can switch out easily is Tech Assault. This slot can be swapped for Vicious Bond, Mystic Bond, or Pounce if you would prefer. To be honest with you, you don't need to use this companion, you can use anything else since Garuda's damage is super high. The Panzer Claw build is pretty much the same as the other showcases. I use Balanced Posture to ensure all enemies are primed effectively with viral damage. Shocking Claws drastically increases our status chance and applies electric damage. Bite increases crit chance enough to give us a crit damage bonus via Tenacious Bond, and the rest of the mods increase the damage that the Panzer does and primes them for attacks from our weapons or the Dreadheart. As usual in Void Cascade, the focus school is Madurai. Void Strike and Void Fuel were used to finish off the spectral forms of Thrax units, especially when I was lazy. Phoenix Talons increased physical damage and operator damage by 30%, but did not see much use because weapons were barely used. Power Transfer increased operator crit damage, and Warframe casting speed, which made spamming Garuda's abilities much easier. Contamination Wave made Thrax units much more susceptible to void damage, though I didn't use it much, instead opting to Void Strike most of the time. Finally, Sling Strength increases ability strength by 40% upon Void Slinging twice back to back, which was handy for Nourish. The amp I used was the standard 147 or Certus Brace, Rathlack Prism, and Fat Scaffold. This is the amp I will always use, and I highly recommend you try it out for level cap runs. I use Magus Cloud, Magus Lockdown, Eternal Eradicate, and Eternal Onslaught as my operator arcanes. Time to talk about the run. As mentioned in my first video, Garuda Prime is barely talked about, which is funny given her high strength and affinity for scaling mission types. Void Cascade is arguably the best mode to show her off in since it's fast-paced, has high enemy density, and puts her damage potential to the test. Let's begin by discussing her first ability, Dreadmirror. Dreadmirror's damage scales with level, or in better terms, enemy health. The higher an enemy's health pool, the more damage the Dreadheart will steal, thus dealing higher damage on detonation. Because of this, Garuda has an effectively infinite damage scaler and is only limited by the game's level system. Dreadmir's damage is also affected by a lot of external factors. In the build, we have Vigorous Swap, which is a multiplicative bonus. We also have Nourish for viral damage and priming, and Arcane Avenger for crit scaling. Our weapons, specifically Cedo, apply corrosive and cold for higher direct damage, and our Archon Shards further enhance that. There's also the possibility of using a Pharaoh Predicite with the Anabolic Pollination mod to further enhance it with toxin damage. All of this is to say that Garuda's damage from her 1 alone is extremely high. As you will see in the footage later on, it basically made weapon usage obsolete. After a quick rotation of Seeking Talons, Nourish, and a weapon swap, throwing the Dreadheart was akin to throwing a Demon Core. Now what about Nourish plus Bloodletting? This combo was a dream. It offered infinite energy and health thanks to Molt Reconstruct. If you needed any energy, all you had to do was cast Bloodletting. If you wanted to heal, press Nourish. Now for the next 30 seconds, you can spam Nourish and then Bloodletting to your heart's content. In Void Cascade, energy issues are a common problem, but with Garuda, that problem has been completely nullified. It is the simplest energy loop I have ever used, and after using other frames, it's a breath of fresh air. Now let's finally talk about Seeking Talents, which is probably the most underwhelming part of her kit, funnily enough. This ability marks enemies to take slash procs upon being damaged, and with our current setup, those marks bring the slash status chance to 100%. However, there wasn't much of a need for this ability, since her once damage was so high. Of course, it's still used in a rotation, just in case there's a straggler, and for the extra iframes. That being said, if you want to be a bit lazier with stacking the Dreadheart's damage, Seeking Talons can always pick up the slack. It's also worth mentioning that Nourish buffs the talons that hit enemies, increasing their damage and causing them to apply viral stacks. This amplifies the damage of the falling slash procs greatly. So what do I think about Garuda Prime in terms of Void Cascade? She's still broken. There's nothing anyone can say to change my mind. However, I will say that I died 3 times while using her, and that comes down to user error. Her 1 in 4 grant iframes, but requires spam to have her play safely. I wasn't spamming nearly fast enough, which is funny coming from a D1 shit talker. Her damage completely invalidated the use of my weapons, and her playstyle is hilariously simple once you get the grasp of things. Can I recommend her for use? Absolutely. Though, I should warn you that she has a very hands-on playstyle. She is not like Zaku, who can walk around and do whatever they want. You actually have to engage with content. However, for those of you who like to take part in absolute carnage, she's right up your alley. I hope this video helped, and let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for watching and happy farming. Stay safe.
Exalizer has been retired. Working on backups. This discovery interests you. Just lost the Exalizer possession. Any nearby attackers will degrade the Exalizer's performance. Clear them out to get the system working full steam. Exalizer has been retired. Exalizer spent. This cascade is growing out of control.